Hello, hello, hello. My name is Lee, and I am politically speaking. Today, we are going to be reading, with commentary, The Secret Destiny of America, written by Manly P. Hall. This was published on or around 1944. It is in the public domain. This is not a joke. I have not read this. I don't know what it says, but I feel like it would be very interesting to take a look at the secret destiny of America as seen by Manly P. Hall in 1944, which I believe would have been just after World War II. So let's get into it. Okay, here we go. Secret Destiny of America by Manly P. Hall. Again, this is in the public domain. Manly Palmer Hall is his full name, at the Philosophical Research Society, 1944. The origin of the democratic ideal. World democracy was the secret dream of the great classical philosophers. Thousands of years before Columbus, they were aware of the existence of our Western Hemisphere and selected it to be the site of the philosophic empire. The brilliant plan of the ancients has survived to our time, and it will continue to function until the great work is accomplished. The American nation desperately needs a vision of its own purpose. So, my personal aside here, it seems like they're tying this into a thread from the ancients, from those who seeded our world, from the main plan for our planet, um, and perhaps it is that the democracy represents free will, and when that is taken away, a planet plunges into darkness and chaos, right? Let's get back into it. There is an image here, and let me see if I can. There we go. Okay. By preserved symbols or preserved symbols, we can know that it is from the remote past, from the deep shadows of the medieval world, as well as from the early struggles of more modern times, that the power of American democracy has come. Wow, okay. Secret Destiny of America by Manly Palmer Hall. America cannot refuse the challenge of leadership in the post war world. Mere physical reconstruction of ravaged countries and the reorganization of political, economic, and social systems is the lesser task we will face. The larger problem and the greater challenge is in how to set up a new order of world ethics, a new order of world ethics firmly established on the foundation of democratic idealism. Experts in various fields have already submitted programs designed to meet the needs of those nations whose way of life has been disrupted by war. But with the failing comment to specially trained minds, these planners incline to think mostly in the terms of their own particular interests. As yet, no one has touched on the fundamentals of international ethics. No one has an advanced working plan securely based upon a broad, deep, and sympathetic understanding of the human being and his problems. The thinking has been in the dual fields of power politics and material economics, with remedies expressed in the terms of charts, blueprints, patterns, and industrial programs. But there is one new and encouraging element present in most of the recommendations of today's experts. They are recognizing the necessity of conceiving the world as one interdependent structure. Yet, even as they recognize the need for unity of human interests, their recommendations are for the perpetuation of highly competitive economic policies, which, if they are constantly applied, must lead in the end to war and discord. It is not an easy task to unite the efforts of the human race towards the accomplishment of any common good. Mankind in the majority is selfish, provincial in attitude, and concerned primarily with personal success and acquiring creature comforts. It will not be possible to build an enduring peace until the average man has been convinced that personal selfishness is detrimental to personal happiness and personal success. It must be shown that self seeking has gone out of fashion and that the world is moving on to a larger conception of living. This is a very interesting take. Let's see where he takes it. The post-war planners have more of idealism in their programs than has ever before been expressed in the problem of the relationships of nations, but it is still not enough. A clear and complete statement of a world purpose is required, a world dream great enough to inspire unity of world effort. These are the days of America's opportunity to lead a still troubled mankind towards a better way of life. If we meet this challenge, we will ensure not only the survival of our nation for centuries to come, but we shall gain the enduring gratitude of our fellow men and Americans and will be remembered to the end of time as great enlightened people. It is not enough that we solve particular problems. We must solve the very cause of the problem itself. Wars, depressions, crime, dictators, and their oppressions are the symptoms giving clear indication of a greater ailment. To examine each problem solely in the terms of the problem itself, without recognition of its true relationship to a larger and more universal necessity, is to fail in the broader implications of an enduring peace and prosperity. Experience should have taught us long ago that policies which have originated from material considerations and attitudes have proved inadequate. The whole story of civilization and the records of history tell us that all such adjustments hold no hope of lasting peace or security. But here we are again, preparing ourselves to be satisfied with temporary solutions for permanent problems. The recognition is long overdue that we oversimplify the problem of world peace when we think that process is one of breaking the task down for examination of its materialistic parts, and then hopefully devising an applicable remedy for each of these. The physical conditions of human existence are not the whole of the human problem. We could adjust all material considerations to the point of supremest equity and yet accomplish virtually nothing solutional. Wow. So true. The greatest of known problems is the human problem. And not until all embracing examination is made into every phase of human needs can there be an adequate reconstruction policy for a post war world. That man is physical is obvious, but he is also mental and emotional. He is spiritual and he has a soul. These latter factors are not so obvious. What to do about them is not so easy, for they are difficult to understand and even more difficult to classify and reduce to a working pattern. We, as the builders of a civilization, will have to learn that only when equal consideration is given to each of these elements of man's nature will we arrive at the solutions for the disasters into which men and nations precipitate themselves. Our post war reconstructors, ours, if not by our selection, at least with our consent, are not outstandingly qualified for this broader task. Few indeed are the statesmen and politicians who have any conception of man as a spiritual being. And as for military leaders, they are primarily disciplinarians, invaluable as such in times of war, but not at all emotionally geared to the problems of individualistic peacetime character. And world planners recruited from among our industrial leaders, it must be admitted, are not generally informed on the workings of the human psyche. Those who have made the study of human conduct their life work, the sociologists, have little scientific knowledge of the hidden springs that animate the very conduct into its amazing diversity of manifestations. And if a word is to be said for bringing in the clergy, it might be that the theologian planner who will be truly useful will be one who acquires at least some knowledge of the science of biology. We are displaying a woeful lack of vision in the way we fumble with the eternal laws of life. It is not enough that we now hopefully create a setup permitting men to give allegiance with their minds or to serve faithfully with their bodies. We must someday face the truth that man is inevitably and incurably an idealist. For this is the truth that will set us free. Man's need is for the idealistic content of his nature to be properly nourished, and then his whole consciousness will impel him to right action, and then no more will our laws fail, treaties be broken, and the rights of man stand violated. The American nation desperately needs a vision of its own purpose. It must conceive it in a generous idealism, great and strong enough to bind thoughtless and selfish persons to something bigger than themselves. It must recognize that it is in the intangible ideal that the foundations are laid for all seeable good. Must know that the truly practical course and the course of hard realism for America is one that is laid basically in a generous idealism. This is more than an indicated course, it is one that we must inevitably follow, guided by the hand of destiny. Believing this to be so, I dedicate this book to the proposition that American democracy is part of a universal plan. Our world is ruled by inflexible laws which control not only the motions of heavenly bodies, but the consequences of human conduct. These universal motions, interpreted politically, are impelling human society out of a state of autocracy and tyranny to democracy and freedom. This motion is inevitable, for the growth of humans is a gradual development of mind over matter, and the motion itself represents the natural and reasonable unfoldment of the potentials within human character. Those who attempt to resist this motion destroy themselves. To cooperate with this motion and to assist nature in every way possible to the accomplishment of its inevitable purpose is to survive. Thousands of years before the beginning of the Christian era, many enlightened thinkers discovered the will of God as expressed through nature in the affairs of men. They made known their discoveries in terms of religions, philosophies, sciences, arts, and political systems. These first statements are now the admired moments of ancient learning. Available to men of today, they are generally ignored. Years of research among the records of olden peoples available in libraries, museums, and shrines of ancient cultures has convinced me that there exists in the world today and has existed for thousands of years a body of enlightened humans united in what might be termed an order of the quest. It is composed of those whose intellectual and spiritual perceptions have revealed to them that civilization has a secret destiny. Secret, I say, because this high purpose is not realized by the many. The great masses of people still live along without any knowledge whatsoever that they are part of a universal motion in time and space. Pythagoras, Plato, Aristotle, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad are among the greatest names recorded in history, but it is not customary to regard the men who bore these names as statesmen or sociologists. They are thought of as philosophers, sages, seers, and the mystics, whose doctrines have no application to the political needs of an industrial nation, civilization. And yet, it is men like Plato and Buddha who still exercise the most powerful force in mortal affairs towards the perpetuation and preservation of a civilized state among all nations. All of the great leaders of ancient times realized and taught that the establishment of a state of permanent peace among the nations depended on the release of human ideals, but through properly trained and disciplined minds capable of interpreting these ideals in the terms of the common good. World democracy was the secret dream of the great classical philosophers. Toward the accomplishment of this greatest of all human ends, they outlined programs of education, religion, and social conduct directed to the ultimate achievement of a practical and universal brotherhood. And in order to accomplish their purposes more effectively, these ancient scholars bound themselves with certain mystic ties in a broad confraternity. In Egypt, Greece, India, and China, the state mysteries came into existence. Orders of initiated priest philosophers were formed as a sovereign body to instruct, advise, and direct rulers of the states. Thousands of years ago in Egypt, these mystical orders were aware of the existence of the Western Hemisphere and the great continent we now call America. The bold resolution was made that this Western continent should be the site of the philosophic empire. Just when this was done, it is impossible now to say, but certainly the decision was reached prior to the time of Plato, for a thinly veiled statement of this resolution is the substance of his treatise on the Atlantic islands. One of the most ancient of man's constructive ideals is the dream of a universal democracy and a cooperation of all nations in a commonwealth of states. The mechanism for the accomplishment of this ideal was set in motion in the ancient temples of Greece, Egypt, and India. So brilliant was the plan and so well it administrated that it has survived to our time and will continue to function until the great work is accomplished. Philosophy set up its house in the world to free men by freeing them of their own inordinate desires and ambitions. It saw selfishness as the greatest crime against the common good, for selfishness is natural to all who are untutored. It recognized that the mind has to be trained in the laws of thinking before men can be capable of self-rulership. And it knew that the democratic commonwealth can be a reality only when our world is a world of self-ruling men, people. And so it is from the remote past, from the deep shadows of the medieval world, as well as from the early struggles of more modern times, that the power of American democracy has come. But we are only on the threshold of the democratic state. Not only must we preserve that which we have gained through the ages of striving, we must also perfect the plan of ages, setting up here the machinery for a world brotherhood of nations and races. This is our duty and our glorious opportunity. It seems to me that the basic plan for the post-war world should be one solidly founded in this great dream of universal brotherhood. It is not enough to work on the problem solely in the terms of politics and industry. The formula must express a broad idealism, one that appeals to the finest institutions of man, and one universally understandable by all who have lived, dreamed, and suffered on this mortal sphere. All right, that is chapter 1 of The Secret Destiny for America by Manly Palmer Hall. This is very interesting. I hope you will join me for part 2, and I will see you next time.